Imagine a world in which you had the power to edit people's DNA as easily as editing a Word document. You could make sure that your future children are born with blue eyes, cute little smiles and zero health concerns, or you might choose to rid the entire world of cancer and other nasty diseases once and for all. Either way, it sounds like an awesome superpower, right? Well, now imagine what you could do with that same power if you were a terrorist. I know, it might seem like a far-fetched, hypothetical scenario, but due to recent scientific advances, these considerations are a lot more true to life than you might think. And it's all thanks to a breakthrough in biology, specifically a gene editing technique known as Crispr. So, what exactly is Crispr? How does it work? And is it more likely to lead to the improvement or devastation of mankind? Here's everything you need to know. If you've finished your first year of high school, or watched enough videos on YouTube, I'm sure you're already aware of the importance of DNA. Practically every living thing on Earth is defined by its genetic makeup, from the tiniest single-celled organisms to humans, whales, and everything in between. It's what makes us who we are, and for millions of years, creatures have evolved gradually through a process of natural selection and genetic mutations to adapt to the world that we live in. Not all mutations are beneficial, however, as some have resulted in diseases or disabilities that can negatively affect our quality of life. This is where modern science comes in. Crispr, an acronym that stands for Clustered Regularly Interspaced Short Palindromic Repeats, is a gene editing technique that allows scientists to access a living organism's DNA and replace or remove part of its genetic code, essentially changing its biological features in record time. What often takes nature generations to accomplish can now be achieved overnight. This is an incredible scientific breakthrough, as altering just a single defective gene, one of the 6 billion that make up a DNA double helix in humans, could cure the 10,000 plus diseases caused by a singular genetic defect. In the words of Matthew Porteous, a professor of pediatrics at Stanford and a co-founder of Crispr Therapeutics, quote, "It's like having one typo in a book containing 6 billion letters. With Crispr, we finally have a tool that is much easier to use and far more efficient." Diseases that could potentially be cured using Crispr include Huntington's disease, muscular dystrophy, cystic fibrosis, AIDS, and even cancer. Some forms of blindness could also be eradicated. Without getting too technical, the way Crispr works is by using proteins that act like scissors to cut out unwanted DNA. Healthier DNA can then be substituted in to be used by the host cell for repairs, if that's what the scientist decides to do. The concern for many is that this technology will be abused by people for evil deeds. After all, some men just want to watch the world burn. Let's be honest, it wouldn't be the first time that mankind has used a biological weapon, and if healthy DNA can be implanted, it stands to reason that unhealthy DNA can also be implanted. This could result in diseases spreading rapidly throughout a community, perhaps even targeted at a specific race of people who share similar genetic traits. It's a scary thought. Who can utilise Crispr? Since 2012, when Crispr made its debut, the technology has become increasingly popular because of its ability to edit genes cheaper, faster, and easier than ever before. But I know what you're thinking. Surely Crispr is restricted to the professional scientific community, and it would be hard for a terrorist to get their hands on the technology, let alone be able to actually use it. I mean, you'd certainly hope so, but as it turns out, anyone can legally buy a Crispr genome editing kit online and start experimenting at home unrestricted. What's more, supplies cost less than $200, which is insanely cheap when you consider the cost of many drugs and other treatments. Integrated DNA technologies currently offer products targeting human, mouse, rat, zebrafish, or nematode genes, along with small print that states, quote, "For research use only, not for use in diagnostic procedures. IDT does not intend for these products to be used in clinical applications and does not warrant their fitness or suitability for any clinical diagnostic use. Purchaser is solely responsible for all decisions regarding the use of these products and any associated regulatory or legal obligations." It's great that they covered their own potential legal issues, But what kind of terrorist reads the small print or cares about that? Isn't there a moral obligation to keep such potentially damaging materials secure or regulated? At least until we know more about it. This brings us neatly to the subject of biohacking. If you've never heard of biohacking before, it's basically DIY biology. It involves everything from dieting and vitamin supplements to electronic implants and home-based gene editing. Many biohackers consider themselves to be, quote, transhumanists. In other words, they desire to transform or subvert the human condition by using technology to enhance their physique or brain power. How is this relevant to CRISPR? Because it proves that while there are those who believe that things like gene editing should be controlled and regulated, there are many people, such as biohackers, who reserve the right to modify their own bodies however they choose. But with this freedom comes risk. Risks versus rewards. Dr. Jennifer Doudna, the co-discoverer of CRISPR, understands both the immense possibilities of her discovery in terms of being both a miracle and a potential catastrophe. In her co-authored book, A Cracking Creation, Gene Editing and the Unthinkable Power to Control Evolution, she describes how CRISPR gives us, quote, the ability to edit not only the DNA of every living human, but also the DNA of future generations. Yet, in a subsequent interview with the New York Times, she admitted that CRISPR carries with it great risk, and called for caution while research continues to be carried out. That research has already revealed some worrying effects when tested on human embryos in an attempt to treat hereditary blindness. Some injected cells reacted by, quote, giving up, and jettisoning entire chromosomes, according to one doctor. In response, a geneticist at New York University warned that, quote, with the amount of power we hold, it is crucial to understand consequences we didn't intend. I guess a key question at this point is, does CRISPR treatment actually work? Well, according to one patient named Victoria, who was the first person with sickle cell disease to be treated using CRISPR back in 2019, yes, it does. She says that since receiving treatment, she feels much better and does not suffer from many of the complications previously brought about by the disease, which can include sudden, severe pain and organ damage. Talking about the effect of CRISPR, Victoria has said, quote, they go from cells that make sickle cells to supercells, the cells that help me be better. Doudna and fellow biochemist Emmanuelle Charpentier were recognised for their work with a Nobel Prize in Chemistry, and there's no denying that CRISPR could be a force for good. But, as with any new technology, we must be aware of the ethical concerns they pose. Some people fear that CRISPR will result in so-called designer babies, with parents selecting desirable physical traits and talents for their children. This could lead to all kinds of discrimination and result in new waves of backlash or terrorism. Alternatively, crops and livestock could be affected by changing the DNA of insects, spreading disease and causing famine. On this issue, Stanford bioethicist Hank Greeley said that, quote, when it comes to experiments on animals, plants and microbes, two things worry me. One is the intentional misuse of CRISPR, the other is that people with good intentions will inadvertently cause harm. That said, people like Dr. Josiah Zayner, a biophysicist turned biohacker who manufactures DIY CRISPR kits, believes the potential rewards outweigh the risks to humanity. Zayner is on a mission to make CRISPR accessible to everyone, rather than limit its access to the rich and powerful. In doing so, he says the technology could even help to restore the balance of power in society, and believes that we can't allow this groundbreaking technology to be left unactualized for fear of it being misused. His argument essentially is that, quote, someone could use computer programming and hacking for evil, but does that mean that we shouldn't teach computer programming? Zayner's controversial stance has already been investigated by medical authorities after he posted a video injecting himself with DNA modified using CRISPR. Although he was cleared of any charges, the event sparked widespread coverage from media and featured in a Netflix documentary titled Unnatural Selection. Incidentally, that documentary also preaches caution from other scientists about playing with fire concerning CRISPR, and how it could lead us towards our doom as a species. Dr. Esfelt, for example, remarks, quote, "The prospect of a wave of genetically modified anything sweeping generation after generation, geographically expanding into city, country, across continents, is utterly terrifying. Just imagine CRISPR being used to create a race of superhuman soldiers. It sounds silly now, but if you don't think there's a chance that this technology will be weaponized and militarized, then sorry, but you're kind of naive." Environmentalist Jim Thomas, who also appears in the documentary, describes CRISPR as, quote, "the most high leverage technology I've seen after maybe nuclear power." The show's creator, Leo Kaufman, summed up the current situation best when he said, quote, "A lot of people, when they hear about it for the first time, a lot of the reactions are fear. The best thing we can do as a society is not to fear it, but to address it and then understand what specifically we think, where specifically we shouldn't go, and where we actually should or could, because it can make a kid see, or it can make people in Burkina Faso not suffer from a horrible disease that in other places people are not suffering from." What do you think? Is CRISPR a technology to be feared because of its potential for misuse? Or should we embrace it freely without any restrictions at all? Let me know in the comments. If you found this video interesting, it would be great if you could leave a like, and if you want to see more, then make sure you subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, until next time.